Okay, so our work is primarily dealing with language programming language design. So what we do, one of the goals is that Huawei is doing a big range of various devices. Therefore, we need one development environment that will allow to write applications and off-system level software, such as applications, and will also provide for high reuse rate. And this should be a developer-friendly environment, fast, helpful, and handy. And we do not have a lot of time, therefore many questions will be skipped. So I will go fast through them. So why is it happening this way and not another way? And I can tell you that one of the key specifics of the language is that we will be supporting component-oriented programming. That was something viral in late 90s, but no one completed it successfully. Therefore, we are coming up with another attempt. In my presentation, I'm not going to elaborate on component-oriented thing. I will be talking about how to select the correct set of object-oriented conditions in the language so that the component makes up. So talking about object-oriented programming, or OOP, actually there is nothing to say right now because OOP can have different definitions. This slide just quotes several conditions from different languages like C++, fast, Go, elegant objects, etc. And it shows that no string has, or no line here does have a check mark. Although we have put down like the law language, which allows to code an object-oriented style very well, but it's not supporting any classical object-oriented conditions. So I can talk about it for a long time, but unfortunately we're not having time for it. So what's next? So OOP is not a simple thing. Another point is like a lavish amount of criticism about OOP, which is about classical object-oriented programming, so what's available in Java and C++. So I will not talk about criticisms, it's important, but I will highlight one quotation of Joe Armstrong, author of Orlando. He said that object orientation leads to the fact that if the panem is used banana, then on top of banana there will be jungle, there will be gorilla that handles the banana and jungle. What does it mean? It means that any reusage of OOP components or class leads to a big number of interdependencies that will be embedded in the software. And actually this is the thing that we need to prevent. So what we plan to do. So the title has some. CLOP is a bug. CLOP, C-L-O-P, is class-oriented programming. So this is the statement. The first specifics or condition of the language is that we don't need any classes. No CLOPs. The second thing is no implementation and inheritance. So I will not be again explaining why it should be not here. And the third point here is that we need to provide for better support for component reuse. For reuse on different devices and platforms. So the component which is reusable but which lives on one device and one platform is not interesting. So the efficiency of component depends largely on whether they're multi-platform or not. The platforms are all different. Therefore, we cannot have use one and the same component on versatile platforms. Huawei produces watches and smart TVs, and it's clear that the UI is going to be different in all these platforms. Therefore, what we are coming up with, components have to be expandable so that we could have some foundation and expand it into several streams. And at the same time, we can keep the components the same. So I will illustrate it with an example that will clarify what our way of thinking now is. So we do have the structure of data with append or remove methods. So the syntax looks like a Go, but still the syntax is clear to everyone. So imagine we have this list and it's used in multiple applications, and for some application a list should be blended with another list. So how this can be done? The very first method is to expand the list. The list expansion is abandoned. And whether we can have implementation inheritance that we want to avoid. What are the other two methods? The first method is that we can write it in the languages that allow for it. For Java it's challenging, but for the majority of other languages it's clear. Okay, it works okay, and we can use append and append list, but there are three major drawbacks. First of all, it should be imported separately and connected separately. And another drawback is that the uniformity is lost, meaning that calling the elements and calling the list look differently. And another point, the performance of this function is highly likely to be worse. So this method is not good. Let's look into the second one. So the second method is we need to amend the description. Okay, so the previous three disadvantages are gone, but we have to recompile the whole thing, including the components of applications that the object list was not using. Therefore, we're going to have a large number of recompiling, and in the system which is well integrated and rolled out is something bad to do. It's really challenging. So there are examples of how this is done. I think everything's clear here. Yeah, let's look into the third solution. And to do this, we will use the advice of Vladimir Lenin, who said that in order to get together, we first have to be separated. And yes, actually, we did the Soviet history studies and Soviet science study back in many years ago. So let's split all these parts and make them atomic. So we will separately describe the implementation of the function with the list. What does it mean? So it means how the list can be implemented in a classical way, like one-way or two-way hash functions, arrays, etc.
This is execution. And then let's put separately execution for each of the methods that will use this execution. And number 3, we will combine. We will introduce another structure, we call it usebox, and it allows us to bring together type of data or class, or call it anything, an object from parts. And the parts are details of implementation and the set. And if we'll have that, then adding append list is obvious. We do it separately, and the structure, another use box, we'll add another use box where we combine all three methods. What will we have as a result? All those program parts that do not use append list, they do not change it. They use box number 1, first the set of methods number 1, and everything is fine. The parts that are useful to use in append list, they are imported into another use box, and they use it in a balanced manner with good productivity. homogeneously. So now we have a combination where all pros are here and no cons at all. But there is one thing that can look like a drawback. We lost one of the cows of such programming, one of the pillars, encapsulation. The details of implementation are not only available in the class, but through the methodology that someone will bring outside. From my perspective, this is not a drawback, but an advantage. I think, as a person who wrote a lot, especially in this type of language, encapsulation, mechanic static encapsulation, I wouldn't say that it's evil, but it's a strange thing, because to protect the content of the structure of the entry should be done against those who can spoil it or those who do not have rights to change it, not everyone else. If you write a class, you cannot correct it without introducing changes. And we have one mechanic border of encapsulation. What do we have if we do? Where can we go in types of encapsulation, considering the method I mentioned? Actually, this is administrative encapsulation that is used everywhere, because some can commit directly into the master, some need larger views, some likes reviews. We anyway have it. We anyway have the protection against a person not competent enough and not having rules not to change our source code. With this methodology, we also have an opportunity to introduce several levels of administrative encapsulation or levels of access. So 3 of them are here. There is access to the code method, specific method. There is access to implementation, execution of the structure, details of execution of structure, and details of execution. The access should be given to developers of the method, but they might not have the right to change it, just utilize it. They have access for utilizing it, but not changing it. And level of access number 3 is access to change, for changes. It should stay in the hands of the owner of the code, who initially set up the structure. So I'm saying that is it a drawback or an advantage? It depends on it is a subjective approach, but this is not a weakness of the method, but a strong point. What I want to say at the end. First of all, this is an experiment. I'm not saying this is a solution. It'll be checked, it'll be prototyped and revised on real developers, tested on real developers, but I think that this will allow us to implementation of this horizontal extension, not vertical extension enhancement. This is a horizontal enhancement. It will allow us to quickly accumulate a set of standard types as to the library or lists, maps, trees, and things like that, because that's where we do not need to do things we do not know how to do. No one knows how to take a class and write it just once and for lifetime. When we write a comprehensive component, we understand that it will be changed many times and enhanced many times. That's why it's better to have this opportunity embedded into it, opportunity to change. So there will be several mechanisms in this language. From the point of view of experimenting, at least, after we check everything, we will select a number of them, but we'll experiment on a larger number. And now we are working on a prototype of a language that, after some time, I hope, probably after a year, we'll be able to show to a wider audience. Thank you. Microphone, please. No microphone, sorry. So we want the library of standard types for it to be written with an opportunity for extensions, horizontal extensions. So let me not answer your question because you already answered it. Thank you. I'll have a look at the standard. You know, we have a specific target niche, developers of apps. And these developers usually are not experts, programmers in programming. So we should give them a language that do not force them to just quit everything. Even with Dart, there are problems. There are not so many people who are ready to program in Dart, but Kotlin is quite a successful language. I'm interested in what you're talking about, but our task is different. We need to create a language for app developers. Any apps for mobile phones, for wearables, for smart TVs, for the whole set of devices that needs software. And those are not very complicated things, but they should be done very quickly. They should be transferable if possible. So I would like to address the authority. Google is doing Dart Flutter. Why? Because they want developers of apps to make one app for 3 platforms, for Fuxi, for Android and iOS. I think this is a good strategy, a winning strategy. Every team of developers, if it can create one app instead of 3, will be happy. And when I say quickly, you know, just a week ago I went to a Dart Up conference in St. Pete, and guys from Yandex told us about an app for a driver on iOS, and they prepare a separate app for Android. Android app is done on Dart, iOS is not on Dart. I'm not saying that we just have Apple and that's it, and everyone else is shot dead. Let's cover everyone. Hello, my name is Alexander. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's a pity it's very short. I didn't have enough time to digest all your ideas and initiatives. After the discussion, I have just only one question, and I will ask the question. For this language, do you develop a system of types that might have the soundness theorem? I'm not speaking about machine checking proofs, but at least on paper. Because unsound systems of types we have in Java and C++ and in other languages, it's strange to make an object system which is also unsound when we already have such. Thank you. Very good question. We are prototyping, we're experimenting. And input conditions for this prototyping is what are the conditions of language should exist and should not exist to just go away from automated checking. Microphone, please. I can say I would also like to have something like that. So let's have last question. We're pressed of time. One question at the back, and then the rest during coffee break. Thank you for your presentation. So as far as I understood, you suggest that the QoS is just mixed from various elements, functions. Am I right? If I have a function that wants to take a list as an input with the interface add and delete, how will it be disclosed in such language? So you want a universal function. I want something as an input that supports deleting and inserting. Sorry, the speaker is too far away from the mic. No sound. Say thank you very much to the presenters. Thank you for this lively discussion. After the